Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, it's Football at 4.
And Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. And it is brought to you by American Airlines and Atlantic City International Airport. ACY now has your one-stop ticket to over 90 domestic and international destinations. Book today at AA.com. Adam Caplan is here today as the Eagles win their game in Cleveland. That's really inconsequential when you think about the wins and losses. But what did he see from the game? So some thoughts on the combined practices and preseason game number 2. Adam was in Cleveland last week, so we got a chance to see those joint practices. And then the game on Sunday, Adam, and obviously we did not see Jalen Hurts in the game. But what about that quarterback position that we got a chance to see in Cleveland between Thursday, Friday, and then the game on Sunday?
Yeah, good to be with you guys. So, yeah, Mike, Gardner Minshew had a good week of practice, the 2 days of practices in Berea, Ohio with the Browns. Certainly much better than he had been earlier in camp when he was very inconsistent. And then obviously in the game he was brilliant. In fact, both games he's played well, particularly this game. Literally, if he would have played the entire game, he might have had 4 scoring drives. But the bottom line is they came out running it, Mike. How about Boston Scott with 11 touches on the first drive? I mean, did not see that coming. Whereas they threw it just about every play in the previous game with Hurts. They ran it here, and then later in the drives they would throw it. So, yeah, it looked good, no doubt about it. And Minshew is terrific. He's clearly the 2. Sinnett's the 3 if they keep 3. Sinnett has a chance to be on the practice squad, but no doubt Minshew has solidified that job. Not that there was any question, but he certainly played very well yesterday.
Yeah, you mentioned Boston Scott. You know, he's one of them guys. Like, I feel like whenever they've asked him to play, whenever someone's gotten hurt and he's got to get extended, playing time, he always seems to do the job. I mean, do they just, is it one of those things where, hey, we know we have Boston here, we don't really, because we keep talking about that running back position, but do they feel stronger about their running back situation than others do?
Mike, it's interesting. So on today's Inside the Birds, which you could get on YouTube or any platform for podcasting, we actually delve into the running back situation and the dilemma that they have. Because as we know, the entire season last year, they were a 2 running back offense. Boston Scott did not have a touch from scrimmage until the second half of the season. When Sanders got hurt and Jordan Howard got hurt, they were forced to play him. He obviously did well. We call him the Giant Killer. He's been amazing against the Giants over his career. But for whatever reason, and part of it's because Jalen Hurts is a big part of the run game. He's almost their third back. They didn't need to use 3 backs. So this season, you wonder, with Kenny Gainwell's inconsistency, particularly after he came back from his hip injury, he had been really disappointing, dropping passes in practice. Sirianni pointed out during Friday's practice 2 mental errors. It's not a secret. Some of the reporters discussed this. Look, Gainwell has not been quite as good as they had hoped for. Now, it doesn't mean he's bad, but you notice Boston Scott, Mike, I know starting only means who's out there for the first series, but Scott got all the touches on the first series, and he was terrific. Averaged well over 5 yards per carry before they got to the red zone. So, look, right now it's interesting. It's one of the questions that we didn't think we had, but we now have. And right now, Mike, it'll be a question when we put together our list of questions heading to the regular season. There's no doubt. Gainwell versus Scott is now a battle. Not only a battle, it's a question mark is who's going to have that role. We know Gainwell will come in passing situations, but who will spell Sanders on early downs?
Adam Caplan with us for Football at 4. Adam, it's Pete Thompson, and I know that you talked about the running game being what they came out and featured, those 14-play drive, the 17-play drive, and, of course, you can't run the football if the offensive line isn't doing their job. Cam Jurgens, again, second week in a row that he started, and he looked pretty good early. I thought Cam Jurgens continues to open up eyes.
Yeah, Pete, good to be with you. Yeah, no doubt about it. He's been one of the great stories of training camp. As one organizational source said to us, he's very well ahead of schedule. I would agree with that. And talking to people at practice, yep, no doubt. And the good thing is once the tackle football started, i.e. the preseason, he's left no doubt that he's ahead of schedule. You know, it's one thing to do it in practice, and he also, by the way, did well in the joint practices. But you got to show it when you could tackle and really hit. And he's really done that. So much so that you got to feel pretty good if he had to play that he can get the job done. Because, again, with live playing in 2 games, filling in for Kelsey, and you didn't know this going in, guys, he's done a very good job. He's certainly been one of the bright spots in training camp of many.
And one of the things I said to Mike Gill earlier in the show, Adam, is that we almost got a little sneak peek to Spuds. Dave Spadaro did a sideline report where he had that protective cap on, and Kelsey came over and banged him on top of the thing to show that it did protect him, allegedly. And that may give us a hint of how serious we should take the elbow issue with Jason Kelsey.
Yeah, it's funny. I talked to Dave about it today. We had a good laugh. He did a great – I mean, look, if you ever worked in television or radio, I remember when I worked for ESPN, Trey Wingo told me that, gave me a tip early on there. He goes, don't worry about anything that goes on around you. Just keep going no matter what. And ironically, I don't remember what year a light fell, and part of it hit the back of my head. And I just went on with the SportsCenter segment. Then I asked, what in the world just happened? So, look, that's what we have to do in the media. Just keep going on.
Adam, the wide receiver thing is interesting because, you got Smith and A.J. and Quez. We think and Pascal are probably good. And most people think Rager, unless he gets traded, is going to be here. But Devin Allen showed the speed and corralled a 55-yarder. Deion Kane, I thought, made a couple tough catches, went up over defenders, and kind of showed something. So are Kane and Allen, do they have a shot here?
Well, here's what I'll tell you. That Kane won't be on the roster if Jalen Rager's traded. We reported months ago that he will not be cut. If Rager is traded, Mosher had a great nugget on our show recently that there were 2 teams involved, at least a minimum of 2 teams that have expressed interest. If they trade Rager, Kane almost certainly will be on the team. And then they would have to figure it. Pascal's obviously he's on the team. He's their 4th receiver. He's had a great camp, by the way, since he came back. From the food poisoning. It's amazing. He lost all the strength and all this weight. He looked great, Pascal. And then Deion Kane's the other guy. It would not surprise me because they want to keep Britton Covey. They kept 6 receivers. Now, in terms of Devin Allen, it's still a major long shot if he's on the roster. I could certainly see him waived, and if he doesn't get claimed, being on their practice squad. I mean, he did against third stringers. I mean, look, he has great straight line speed, but he hasn't played meaningful football in 6 years. So let's be serious here. I always say never.
Right.
But it's highly unlikely that Allen will be on the team.
Yeah, I mean, he obviously showed you why he's the fastest man in the world with that, man. He took off and just exploded
and the
past
hurdles.
that defender.
I like that he did the hurdles.
He added the hurdles.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Absolutely.
What are we learning about tight end this week? Because I think we could all say that is probably a big spot behind Goddard that is still up in the air.
Yeah, so as I told you, Mike, on Friday, Grant Calcaterra ran into a fence. It was to my left, and thank goodness he was fine. Didn't look good when he went down, but he's fine. Look, nothing's changed. Goddard has been a star of training camp. Stoles the 2. He was never challenged. They didn't bring anyone to challenge him. I don't know why people thought this was a battle. It was never a battle. The only battle was with Calcaterra would be the 3rd tight end versus Noah Togiai or Richard Rodgers. Richard Rodgers makes sense to be on the practice squad as one of their veterans, and Tyree Jackson looks like he's close. I'll be interested to see what they do. Do they activate him? I watched the run. He looks really good. Now, do they want to keep on PUP for the first four games? That's up to them. But that's it. I mean, there's really been, Calcaterra could have been really interesting if he would not have gotten hurt and been out for the better part of 3 weeks with what we're told is a significant hamstring strain. In fact, I was there the day he did it. He grabbed it, and it was obvious. But he looked, I'll tell you what, Mike, he looked very good running. They purposely limited him on Friday. That was his first day back. He looked very fluid in individual drills.
I know Pete asked you about Cam Jurgens, but how about that second offensive line in general?
Yeah.
And, you wonder if teams around the league are saying, man, the Eagles got some depth there. Maybe we need to make a phone call.
Yeah, so Dillard, Opeta, Jurgens, Anderson, and Driscoll did very, very well. The Eagles love their depth. In fact, the Panthers tried to make a play for Dillard. We reported this last year at the trade deadline. They tried to get Dillard from the Eagles. They were not trading him. In fact, we were told that the Eagles never set the price because they were not shopping him and they didn't want to trade him. It would take a pretty good pick for the Eagles to consider trading him. I think the Eagles roster, we've talked, John and I mean, we've all talked about this on your show, Mike, with Jeff and myself. Since we've done these segments this year, this roster is, we've said this now for 3 months, this roster is even better than we thought it was. It's performed way better in training camp than we expected. are you really going to go with a guy like Raven Clark as your left tackle, as your backup left tackle? The Eagles have to ask themselves that. To entertain a trade for Dillard, you first have to ask yourself that. If you are, then you might be willing to trade him for maybe a third-round pick, which is better than they'd ever get from him with a compensatory pick anyway. It's a really interesting dilemma. I know that they've been resistant to do it, but I'm interested to see if they get any overtures. It's hard to find left tackles. It's not easy.
Adam Caplan's with us for Football at 4, and we've talked about the offense a little bit. Adam, I'd like to switch over to the defensive side of the ball. I know it was a lot of backups, and you mentioned your TV career earlier. I was in TV, and so it's rare that you hear the host of the Eagles, the analyst from the Eagles broadcast, criticize somebody, but Davion Taylor looked a little lost out there at times, and he's in his third season. I mean, he jumped out at me as somebody I thought that didn't really show up yesterday for the Eagles defensively. Is there anybody else on the defensive side that either jumped out to you positive or negative?
Yeah, Kaiser White was an absolute man during practices, Pete. He is. We have not talked about him enough on our Football at 4. It's been a star at training camp. Looks like this is good. Now, he's got to do it when the regular season starts, obviously. But he's been a star of training camp, no doubt about it. He's one of their 2 starting linebackers. The Eagles are going to be a nickel team, so there'll be a multiple front team, which is we reported this in the spring, and that's exactly what we've seen. They're going to mix up coverage. Everything we kind of thought they'd do, they looks like they're going to do, whereas last year, boy, they didn't even do even close to half of what we thought they were going to do.
Right.
But Davion Taylor, guys, he's in good enough physical shape. He's not hurt. He's not anything. We're told he took up yoga to help with the soft tissue injuries, and so far that's been the case. But, man, he's in a tough spot because White, Edwards also had a great camp. Reddick is technically a linebacker. Patrick Johnson, Jacoby Dean, obviously. And then Kyron Johnson, they love for special teams. Those, to me, would be the 6. It'll be fascinating to see what they do because they typically don't cut early-round picks unless they clearly don't think they could help them. Boy, Taylor last summer, guys, before he got hurt, looked like he was coming on, but he just has not played enough football for them. So it's a great question. He's another one who, to me, would be on the bubble.
We got, a look at Jordan Davis and his impact last week. This week, it seemed that his impact wasn't nearly as great, and then that kind of showed that when he doesn't take up the space, the smaller linebackers get exposed a little bit. And, I wonder what you thought about Jordan Davis in this game.
Understand when you're playing all backups, you're going to get backup results. I think sometimes we overanalyze what we expect. Like, well, this guy's got to play great. Well, let's understand he's not subbing in for Fletcher Cox or Javon Hargrave. He's actually starting. He's playing early on with the defense with a bunch of backups. So you're not getting any help. Sometimes these guys get exposed. Yes, he didn't have a great game. It was disappointing. All of them were. They were horrendous versus the run, as the Browns' defense was. It's really interesting how both teams could not stop the run. Now, during practice, I could tell you over the 2 days, he was much better. I don't have an answer for you why he was not as good and why their defense was so bad versus the run. And by the way, look, Josh Dobbs threw the ball well. The Browns quarterback who started, I was a little bit surprised. I've watched Dobbs before. Chipley doesn't throw very well. He did a very good job. But, overall, I wouldn't worry about the backups, playing with backups. I think we overanalyze that stuff. We know what's happened in training camp, and we know what happened in joint practices. I think they're actually in pretty good shape with depth. Marlon Tuipulotu, by the way, has been another guy on very, very under the radar, but has had a good training camp.
Yeah, and we talked about that earlier in the show, Adam, before you joined us about, teams don't tackle in training camp anymore either. The tackling to the ground is a lost art. So, if you see a preseason game that has more tackling in it, what do you expect? I thought Josh Jobe looked pretty good in the action. The team-high 7 tackles at a pass breakup. He flashed a little for me. How about you?
Yeah, Pete, he definitely has been a good story. He's definitely ahead for the 4th outside corner job. He's pushing. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. Josiah Scott got hurt. He limped off the game. We need to get an update, but he was a lock to make the football team. I hate to say that, but he's had a very good camp. Fans have no idea. The fans that are saying that he shouldn't make the team, you clearly don't know what's happened in training camp. He's been a tremendous story of development. The lost art with guys from Doug Peterson's group is that so few players develop. This group, this coaching staff, is developing players much better. There aren't a lot of players where you could say, okay, this guy's not developing or that guy's not developing. A lot of these guys are developing. Now, some of the deep back-end corners have not done the job. Mac McCain, Tay Gowan, and Kerry Vincent, okay, they were guys that no one expected anything of at all. But a lot of the guys they inherited are developing, and that's a good thing.
When you get the young rookies, everybody's always, wants to hear about the rookies. How do they look? Milton Williams was one of those young rookies last year, and so was Marlon Tuipulotu. And, we don't get to hear much about them because they drafted a young player at that position. So what about Milton and Marlon in year number 2? Yeah,
so Tuipulotu, if we turn in on 53 now, I'd have him as the 5th D tackle. That's it. Not going to keep 6, would think. So Williams has been good. Look, he's mainly a D tackle who will play end when you need him to. Derek Barnett is playing DN. He's playing stand-up outside linebacker. They're more multiple, so they're asking guys to play different positions, particularly Barnett, Teron Jackson as well. It's going to be fun to see this defense, guys. We talked about Josiah Scott, who coming in training camp, I didn't think really had much of a chance, but it was just great. And the coaches love him because he's done everything they've asked. That's what you're looking for, guys who have versatility, guys who could give you a little bit more. Milton Williams, what a story he's been. Remember, the guy that the front office won, the GM one is Aleem McNeil, and the guy they got is Milton Williams, and I would argue he's been just as good.
The team's got to get down to the 80-man limit by 4 o'clock tomorrow. Right. And do you anticipate any surprises in this next group?
Absolutely none. In fact, I don't want to cut these guys a further cut, but no. The 80 is easy. It becomes really hard for when we go, guys. Next Tuesday, the 30th, at 4 p.m. Eastern, you got to go from 80 to 53. We were saying this on the show this morning. This is the toughest. This is our 5th year doing Inside the Birds. It's going to be difficult because Reed Blankenship, it's been a good story. Ugo Amadi, they just traded for. They want to see him. Marvin Wilson, you really can't keep 60 tackles, but he's kind of flashed. I mentioned Noah Togiai. He's flashed. Deion Kane's been a great story. They like to keep him. Osika, the backup guard tackle from Buffalo, is an undrafted free agent starting to develop. And Jason Huntley has been a guy that they've taken a really hard look at because of the injuries to Gainwell, Scott, and Sanders. He's coming on. I don't think he'll make it, but they want to take a look at him. So this is the tough thing, guys. This shows you. Last year we thought the roster was poor, really below the line, and I think that kind of showed. They were 9-8. This year the roster is so much better. I mean, again, we've been talking about this now for 3 months. This is not something recent, and it's actually been better than we thought. I'm kind of surprised. It's been Mike. This is we can't. We sort of had fun last year making fun of what the roster looked like. This is not good enough, and boy, they really missed on this. Well, they haven't. These guys have all shown up.
Well, it's funny, Adam. It felt like coming off the season before that this team was in dire straits, really far off the roster, right? And here we are 2 years later, 1 year removed from that long season that they had in 2020, where we're looking at a team that has completely and quickly revamped this roster.
Yeah, it's really been a great thing. A.J. Brown trade, obviously, so far looks great. Quez Watkins, another guy who's developed. We should mention that. Landon Dickerson's take his game. He's not rehabbing anything. That's important. And the guy that I didn't mention really much of is Sua Peta, who's, I don't want to say came out of nowhere. This is his 4th season. He was an undrafted free agent in 2019.
Yeah.
He's been a good story, Mike. So, look, you got to be proud of this thing. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, I mentioned this on our show last week, and I got a good chuckle out of it. People were making fun of me, but I'm going to mention it again. This is the first time in years your Eagle fans won't be embarrassed by the linebacker crew. You'll actually be proud of it. It's actually very talented.
Very deep. Yes, I would concur with Adam Caplan on that. Inside the Birds podcast, it dropped this morning, so you get more in-depth on the Eagles' preseason game number 2 against the Browns. We'll take a look at the joint practices in Miami this week. And then, of course, the Eagles play the Dolphins in the final preseason tune-up before the start of the regular season. Football at 4 is on it all week here on the Sports Bash. Adam, appreciate it, pal.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Jeff Mosher's in tomorrow. Usually Mosher on Monday. Adam and Jeff have flip-flopped, and those two are heading to Miami for the joint practices.
Very good.